Let me show you something that should terrify Southeast Asian governments. Bangkok's Khao Road. The backpacker capital of the world for decades, looks like a ghost town on Tuesday nights now. Bars that used to be packed wall to wall are running at half capacity, some have closed permanently. Walk through at 9 p.m. and you'll see staff outnumbering customers. Boracay in the Philippines, the famous white beach that used to require reservations months in advance. You can walk in and get beachfront rooms with same-day booking, in peak season. Hanoi's old quarter, still busy, but the Europeans and Americans who used to fill those coffee shops, they're not coming back in the numbers they used to. Something has fundamentally broken in Southeast Asian tourism. And I'm not talking about a temporary dip or a slow recovery from lockdowns. I'm talking about a structural shift that's emptying beaches, closing businesses, and forcing countries that built their economies on tourism to face an uncomfortable truth. Tourists are going somewhere else. The numbers tell a brutal story. Thailand welcomed 35 million tourists in 2024. Sounds impressive until you realize they were expecting 40 million and used to hit that regularly before 2020. The Philippines? They're projecting maybe 6 to 7 million visitors in 2025, down from optimistic forecasts of 10 million. Vietnam's recovery has stalled halfway. Cambodia's tourism revenue is collapsing. Malaysia's seeing growth, but not at the rates they need. Meanwhile, countries that weren't even on most travelers' radar 5 years ago are exploding. Portugal is flooded with digital nomads. Spain's seeing record numbers. Colombia is becoming a hotspot for the exact same travelers who used to default to Thailand. Japan's weak yen has turned it into the new affordable Asia destination. So what the hell happened? How did Southeast Asia, the region that invented budget travel, the place that defined what a gap year meant for an entire generation, how did it lose its grip on global tourism? I've spent the last 2 months talking to tourists, expats, business owners, and locals across Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And what I've found isn't just about COVID recovery or flight prices. It's about broken promises, shattered trust, and a region that forgot what made it special in the first place. This isn't a hit piece. I love Southeast Asia. I've spent years of my life here. But someone needs to say out loud what everyone's thinking privately. Southeast Asia is losing, and it's losing badly. And if these countries don't wake up soon, this isn't a temporary slump. It's a permanent decline. Let's start with the most obvious problem. Southeast Asia isn't cheap anymore. And that matters because cheap was literally the entire value proposition. For decades, the pitch was simple. Come to Southeast Asia, stretch your dollar, live like a king on a backpacker budget. That's almost gone, for real. I'll give you real numbers from my own trips. In 2019, a decent hotel room in central Bangkok cost 800 to 1,200 baht, roughly $25 to $35. Same room today. 2,000 to 3,000 baht, that's $60 to $85. In Manila, mid-range hotels in Makati that used to run 1,500 to 2,000 pesos are now 3,500 to 5,000 pesos, nearly doubled. But everywhere got more expensive after COVID, you're thinking. Sure. But here's the problem. Southeast Asia got more expensive than the alternatives. A decent meal in Bangkok now costs about the same as Lisbon. Let that sink in. You can eat in a European capital for roughly the same price as a Thai street food stall. In Hanoi, a bowl of pho that used to cost 30,000 dong is now 60,000 to 80,000. In Manila, a plate of adobo at a local eatery went from 80 pesos to 180 pesos in 5 years. The worst part, the quality didn't improve. The service didn't get better. The experience didn't upgrade. Only the price changed. Domestic flights are an absolute disaster. This is where Southeast Asia has completely shot itself in the foot. A round-trip flight from Manila to Palawan, a 1.5-hour journey, costs 8,000 to 15,000 pesos, depending on season. That's $140 to $260 for a domestic flight in the supposedly cheap Philippines. Compare that to Vietnam, where you can fly Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City, the entire length of the country, for $40, or Thailand, where domestic flights used to be affordable but now regularly hit $100 plus for routes like Bangkok to Chiang Mai. Meanwhile, you can fly across Spain for €30, you can cross Portugal for €25, you can fly from Bogota to Cartagena in Colombia for $50. Do you see the problem? Southeast Asia is charging premium prices for economy experiences, and it's not just tourists noticing. I talked to a German couple in Lisbon last month. They used to spend every summer in Thailand, Chiang Mai. Specifically, this year they're in Portugal. Why? It costs about the same, but the infrastructure actually works here. We have healthcare we can trust. The food is amazing. We feel safer. Why would we go back to dealing with Thailand's chaos for the same price? That's the death knell right there. When your entire competitive advantage was affordability, and you lose that advantage, what's left? The hotels in Southeast Asia started pricing themselves like they're in Singapore or Tokyo, but they're not delivering Singapore or Tokyo quality. You're paying $80 for a hotel room with spotty Wi-Fi, occasional power outages, and questionable water pressure. That same $80 in Spain gets you a boutique hotel in a 16th century building with perfect infrastructure. Street food in Bangkok's tourist areas now costs more than food court meals in Japanese malls. Let me repeat that. Thailand is more expensive than Japan for certain things now. How is that even possible? The currency situation made everything worse. The Thai baht strengthened significantly against the dollar and euro over the past year. The Philippine peso has been relatively stable, but prices rose faster than currency changes can explain. What this means in practice, every visitor from Europe, America, Australia or anywhere else is getting fewer baht, fewer pesos, fewer dong for their money than they did 3 years ago. The most insulting part is the dual pricing. This one drives me absolutely insane because it's so blatant and so short-sighted. Thailand still charges foreigners different prices than locals at national parks, temples, some museums. The Philippines does it too, tourist areas slapping on foreigner surcharges that locals don't pay. I get the economic argument. Locals earn less, so foreigners should pay more. But that's not how tourism works. That's not how you build trust. When a tourist shows up at a temple and sees they're being charged 5 times what a local pays, they don't think, oh, that's fair. They think, I'm being ripped off because I'm foreign. And they tell everyone. They post it on Reddit, on Facebook groups, in travel forums. Dual pricing might earn you a few extra dollars per transaction, but it costs you immeasurably in reputation. Meanwhile, Spain charges everyone the same price. Portugal charges everyone the same. Japan charges everyone the same. Those countries figured out that treating tourists with respect actually builds loyalty. The comparison to Latin America is devastating for Southeast Asia. I've talked to dozens of digital nomads who've shifted from Chiang Mai or Bali to Medellin, Playa del Carmen or Buenos Aires. They're paying comparable prices to what Southeast Asia charges now, but getting better internet, similar or better food, comparable weather, and a sense that they're not being constantly nickeled and dimed. One American remote worker told me, in Chiang Mai I felt like every interaction was a negotiation. Someone trying to charge me double, a taxi refusing the meter, a restaurant with different prices for foreigners. I got exhausted. In Medellin I pay what locals pay. I don't have to be on guard all the time, it's just easier. That word easier, that's what Southeast Asia used to own. It used to be the easiest place to travel. Now it's become complicated and expensive. That's not a winning combination. Here's where it gets really ugly. Southeast Asia has a scam problem, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Almost all tourists I've spoken to had either been scammed themselves or knew or heard of someone who'd been scammed during their Southeast Asia trip. That's not an exaggeration. Let's start with Thailand because it's the most visible example. The taxi scam at Bangkok's airport is so predictable, it's basically a meme at this point. You land, exhausted from a 15-hour flight, and immediately you're targeted. Taxis refusing to use meters. Drivers demanding triple the fare rate. Aggressive toots blocking your path. The Thai government has cracked down on this approximately 47 times in the last 5 years. It still happens. Every single day. Pattaya's jet ski scam has been running for literally more than 20 years. 20 years. Same scam. Rent a jet ski, return it, suddenly there's damage you caused and now you owe thousands of dollars or they're calling the police. Everyone knows about it. It still happens dozens of times per week. Phuket's organised crime syndicates controlling taxi services, threatening Grab drivers, forcing tourists into overpriced transport. The whole world has seen the videos. It's still happening. The Philippines has its own special brand of tourism disasters. Manila's airport taxi mafia has been operating for decades. The meter broken scam. The take the long route scam. The I don't have change for 1,000 pesos scam. Even though your fare was 300 pesos. But the Philippines adds some creative new nightmares. The fake tour operator scam, where you book an island hopping tour, pay the deposit, show up at the meeting point and nobody's there. Your money's gone, the number is disconnected. The bar scam in Manila, where your bill mysteriously includes bottles you never ordered. And when you dispute it, suddenly 3 large men appear and suggest you pay the bill or there will be problems. The romance scams are their own category of disaster. Western men falling for Filipinas who drain their bank accounts then disappear. I could do an entire video just on this, but for tourism purposes, here's what matters. These stories spread. They spread fast, and they make people think twice about visiting. Vietnam has been better traditionally. The scam level was lower, but it's catching up. Hanoi's old quarter is now full of restaurants with tourist menus, higher prices, sometimes lower quality. The taxi scam where the meter runs at triple speed. The fake war museum tours where you're taken to a gift shop instead of actual historical sites. What's changed isn't that scams exist everywhere. What's changed is the volume, the brazenness, and most importantly, the total lack of consequences. Tourists post videos of scams happening in real time. Those videos get millions of views, and nothing changes. The same taxi driver scams the next tourist. The same tour operator disappears with deposits. The same bar runs the same bill padding scheme. This creates a catastrophic trust problem when tourists can't trust basic transactions, can't trust that a taxi will charge a fair rate, can't trust that a tour they booked will actually happen, can't trust that the price on the menu is the price they'll pay. They stop coming, or they come once, have a bad experience, and never return. I talked to an Australian couple in their 60s who'd just finished a month in Thailand. They'd been coming every year for 15 years. This was their last trip. Why? We're just tired of it, tired of constantly being on guard, tired of every transaction being a negotiation, tired of feeling like we're targets instead of guests. That sentiment, I heard it again and again. The exhaustion, the feeling of being hunted rather than welcomed. Social media has amplified this exponentially. One bad experience used to maybe reach a few friends via email. Now it reaches thousands via TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, travel groups. A single viral scam video can poison the well for an entire destination. The Philippines is especially vulnerable to this. Every foreigner death makes international news. Every scam gets posted in expat groups with 500,000 members. Every horror story spreads like wildfire. And here's the thing, most tourists don't actually get scammed. Most have perfectly fine trips. But the perception has shifted. Southeast Asia now has a reputation problem. It's seen as a place where you have to be constantly vigilant, where you can't relax, where everyone's trying to take advantage of you. That's death for tourism, because tourism is supposed to be escape. People want to relax, they want to trust, they want to feel welcome. When a destination makes you feel like prey, you don't go back. And you tell your friends not to go either. The comparison to other regions is stark. Yes, Europe has pickpockets, yes, Latin America has crime. But travellers don't feel like the entire system is designed to rip them off. They don't feel like they're being scammed at every turn. In Spain, if a taxi driver tries to scam you, you report them and something actually happens. In Thailand, you report them and nothing. The driver is back at the airport tomorrow, scamming the next tourist. This culture of impunity, where scammers face no real consequences, has corroded trust to the point where even honest businesses suffer. The good taxi drivers, the honest tour operators, the fair restaurants, they're all tainted by association, and the governments seem powerless or unwilling to fix it. They announce crackdowns, they create hotlines, they post signs, but the scams continue because the money is too good and the risks are too low. Until Southeast Asian governments actually start protecting tourists, actually arresting scammers, actually revoking licenses, actually creating systems where tourists feel safe, this trust deficit will keep growing, and tourists will keep choosing destinations where they don't have to sleep with one eye open. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention. Southeast Asia's infrastructure is actively driving tourists away. I don't mean it's not perfect, I mean it's so broken in some places that it ruins the entire experience. And when you're paying prices comparable to Europe or Latin America, you expect things to actually work. Start with the airports, your first impression of any country. Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport has been ranked one of the world's worst airports for over a decade. Not worst in Asia, worst in the world. And nothing has fundamentally changed. It's overcrowded, confusing, outdated, and stressful from the moment you land. I watched a family with 3 kids spend 90 minutes in immigration lines because the airport only had 4 officers working for a flight that brought in 300 passengers. The youngest kid was crying. The parents looked ready to ambush someone. That's their introduction to the Philippines. Bangkok's older airport, Don Mueang, isn't much better. Suvarnabhumi is decent, but can't handle the volume during peak season. You land, you wait. You go through immigration, you wait. You collect bags, you wait. Then you step outside and get mobbed by aggressive taxi touts. Compare this to landing in Lisbon, Madrid, or even Bogota. Modern airports, efficient processing, clear signage. You're in a taxi within 30 minutes of landing. In Manila, you might still be waiting for your bag. But airports are just the beginning. Let's talk about getting around. Southeast Asian cities are largely unwalkable. And I don't mean they're big and spread out. I mean, you literally can't walk in many areas because there are no proper sidewalks, or the sidewalks are broken, blocked by motorbikes, taken over by street vendors, or just disappear randomly. Try walking around central Manila. You'll be dodging traffic, stepping over broken concrete. Navigating around construction that's been temporary for 3 years, it's exhausting. In Bangkok, many areas have decent sidewalks, but then you hit a section where you're forced onto the street because the sidewalk just ends. Compare this to walking through Barcelona, Lisbon, Mexico City. Proper sidewalks, pedestrian zones, cities designed for humans, not just cars. That matters more than people realize. When a city is walkable, you explore more. You discover things. You spend money at small businesses. When a city is hostile to pedestrians, you stay in your hotel or take expensive taxis everywhere. Public transportation is another disaster zone. Bangkok's BTS and MRT are actually good. Efficient, clean, affordable. But they don't go everywhere. Miss those lines and you're back to dealing with taxis or traffic. Manila's MRT is a nightmare. Overcrowded, unreliable, frequently broken down. I've seen trains so packed that security guards literally push people into the cars to fit more bodies. That's not tourism infrastructure, that's survival infrastructure for locals. Vietnam's public transport in major cities is improving, but still decades behind where it needs to be. Most tourists end up on motorbikes or in grab cars because there's no real alternative. The Philippines is especially brutal for inter-island travel. You want to explore the country. You're either paying outrageous prices for domestic flights, or you're taking ferries that might leave on time, or might leave 4 hours late. Nobody knows. There's no reliable schedule. I met an Italian couple trying to get from Manila to Coron. Their ferry was delayed 6 hours. No explanation, no compensation, no apology, just wait. They eventually made it, spent 3 days in Coron, and immediately flew to Japan for the rest of their trip. We're done with the Philippines, they told me. Or it's too hard. That phrase, it's too hard, I heard that constantly. Southeast Asia has made travel difficult in ways that other regions haven't. Roads are another catastrophe. Thailand's roads outside Bangkok are generally okay, though traffic is insane. The Philippines, forget it. Potholes, flooding during rainy season, highways that suddenly turn into dirt roads. I've been on main roads in the Philippines that would be considered unacceptable farm roads in Europe. Vietnam's infrastructure is improving rapidly. Credit where it's due. They're building highways, modernizing airports, investing in transport. But they're still years behind where they need to be for mass tourism. Now let's talk about internet and connectivity, because this matters for the huge digital nomad market. Thailand's internet in cities is generally good. Vietnam's is improving. The Philippines? Absolutely terrible in most places. I've had better mobile internet in rural Peru than I've had in central Manila. Wi-Fi in hotels is often so slow it's basically decorative. For digital nomads who used to flock to Chiang Mai or Manila, this is a deal breaker. Why struggle with 5 megabits per second internet when you can get 100 megabits per second fiber in Medellin, Lisbon, or Mexico City? Power reliability is another issue. In the Philippines especially, brownouts and blackouts are just accepted as normal. Your hotel loses power for 4 hours. No generator, no backup. Just sit in the dark and sweat. I stayed in a supposedly nice hotel in Makati that lost power 3 times during my week there. Each time for 2 to 3 hours. Try working on your laptop with no AC and 34-degree heat, with 80% humidity. It's not fun. Healthcare infrastructure is hit or miss. Thailand has excellent private hospitals in Bangkok and major cities. They market medical tourism aggressively. But outside Bangkok, quality drops fast. The Philippines has some good hospitals in Manila and Cebu, but they're expensive, and the quality variance is huge. You might get world-class care, or you might get a nightmare. Tourists and expats don't want to gamble with their health. Vietnam's healthcare for foreigners is improving, but still spotty. Most expats and long-term tourists keep international insurance and plan to evacuate to Bangkok or Singapore for anything serious. Compare this to Spain or Portugal, where EU health standards mean quality care is accessible everywhere. Compare to Colombia, where medical tourism is booming because they have genuinely world-class private hospitals at reasonable prices. The infrastructure deficit matters because it's death by 1,000 cuts. No single issue drives tourists away, but the cumulative effect of airports that don't work, cities you can't walk, transport you can't rely on, internet that doesn't connect, and power that cuts out randomly, it's exhausting. And when you're paying the same, or more than you'd pay in countries with functioning infrastructure, the value proposition collapses. I talked to a French digital nomad who spent 6 months in Da Nang. She loved Vietnam. Beautiful place, great food, friendly people. But she moved to Valencia, Spain for her next 6 months. Why? Everything just works there. Internet is perfect. I can walk everywhere. Trains run on time. It's just easier. That's the word again, easier. Southeast Asia has made itself too difficult. The tragedy is this is fixable. It's not like the beaches disappeared or the culture changed. The raw materials for amazing tourism are still there. But the infrastructure that lets people enjoy those raw materials has rotted to the point where tourists are giving up. And the competition isn't sitting still. Portugal is building, Spain is modernizing, Mexico is investing. They're making themselves easier while Southeast Asia makes itself harder. That's not a winning strategy. Now we need to talk about safety, and I know this is sensitive, but it has to be addressed because perception of danger is keeping people away. Let me be crystal clear up front. Most tourists to Southeast Asia have perfectly safe trips. The vast majority come home with nothing worse than a sunburn and a story about bartering at a market. But tourism doesn't run on reality, it runs on perception, and the perception of Southeast Asia's safety has taken a serious hit. Thailand's road diff statistics are genuinely horrific. It consistently ranks as one of the most dangerous countries in the world for traffic fatalities. Every year thousands of people die on Thai roads, and tourists are included in those statistics. I've lost count of how many tourists I've met with road rash from motorbike accidents, broken bones, serious injuries. Every hospital in tourist areas has a steady stream of foreigners coming in with crash injuries. Is it their fault for renting bikes without proper training? Often yes, but that doesn't change the fact that Thailand's roads are killing tourists at a rate that would be unacceptable anywhere in Europe or North America. The Philippines has its own safety nightmare. Every time a foreigner gets killed, and it happens with disturbing regularity, it makes international news. The Korean streamer killed in Angeles City, the German businessman shot in Manila, the various kidnapping cases, the attacks on tourists in certain areas. Again, these are statistical outliers. Millions of tourists visit the Philippines and are fine, but each incident gets amplified globally. It gets posted in every expat group, every travel forum, every news site, and potential tourists see it and think, maybe I'll go somewhere else. The insurgency situation in parts of Mindanao creates an entire no-go zone. The government tells tourists not to go there. Travel insurance doesn't cover you there. That's a huge chunk of the country that's basically closed to tourism because of safety concerns. Vietnam is generally safer than Thailand or the Philippines for street crime, but they have their own issues. Petty theft is common in tourist areas. Bag snatching on motorbikes is a known problem. Tourists getting drugged and robbed happens often enough that embassies warn about it. But here's what's changed. Social media has turned every incident into a viral moment. Someone gets scammed at a bar in Bangkok, there's video. Someone's bag gets snatched in Hanoi, there's video. A tourist gets attacked in Manila. It's all over Reddit within hours. This creates a perception that Southeast Asia is dangerous even when statistically it might not be more dangerous than anywhere else. But tourism doesn't care about statistics. Tourism cares about feelings. And travellers feel unsafe. I talked to parents planning a family trip. They were deciding between Thailand and Spain. They chose Spain specifically because they felt it was safer for their kids. Not based on crime statistics, based on stories they'd read online. That's a tourism loss. That family would have spent 2 weeks and thousands of dollars in Thailand. Instead, Spain got that money. The comparison to Latin America is interesting here. Colombia, Mexico, these places have genuinely higher crime rates than Southeast Asia in many categories. But the tourism industry there has gotten better at managing perception. They've created safe zones, they've invested in tourist police, they've worked hard to change the narrative. Southeast Asia has done the opposite. They've let the negative stories pile up without effectively countering them. Scams contribute to the safety perception problem. When tourists feel like everyone's trying to rip them off, they feel unsafe. Not physically unsafe necessarily, but vulnerable. Targeted. That feeling is almost as bad as actual crime for tourism. Petty theft is rampant in certain areas. Phone snatching, bag slashing, pickpocketing. It's everywhere in tourist zones. I've had 2 phones stolen across multiple trips to Southeast Asia. Both times in crowded tourist areas. Both times despite being careful. Friends of mine have had money taken from their hotel rooms. Valuables stolen from locked bags. Cameras snatched while taking photos. The hit rate is surprisingly high if you talk to enough travellers. Again, is it worse than Barcelona or Paris for pickpockets? Maybe not. But the combination of petty theft, plus scams, plus occasional violent crime, plus terrible traffic safety, plus health concerns creates a compound perception of danger. And when you're choosing between destinations, why pick the one that feels risky? Women travellers especially report feeling unsafe in parts of Southeast Asia. Sexual harassment, aggressive come-ons. Uncomfortable situations in bars and clubs. This has gotten so bad that there are entire Facebook groups and forums dedicated to women, sharing safety tips for Southeast Asia travel. Thailand's sex tourism reputation, which is partially earned and partially exaggerated, creates discomfort for many tourists. Families don't want to walk through Pattaya's walking street with their children. Couples don't want the constant assumption that the Western man is with a bar girl. The Philippines has similar issues. The stereotypes about foreigners coming for romance create an uncomfortable atmosphere for regular tourists who have nothing to do with that scene. These reputation problems are hard to shake. They're built over decades, and they drive away certain demographics completely. The irony is, Southeast Asia is probably safer now than it was 20 years ago. Crime rates have dropped in most categories. Infrastructure has improved, even if it's still inadequate. Healthcare is better, but the perception has gotten worse because information spreads faster. Every bad thing that happens gets amplified. Every good thing gets taken for granted. That's the nature of social media and modern travel culture. But Southeast Asian governments haven't adapted. They still market themselves as if it's 1995 and information travelled slowly. They haven't invested in tourist police the way Mexico has. They haven't created safety campaigns the way Colombia has. They've just hoped people wouldn't notice, and people noticed, and they're not coming. Here's the part that should terrify Southeast Asian tourism boards. The competition isn't sitting still. While Southeast Asia got expensive and difficult, other regions became easier and more attractive. Let's start with the obvious one. Japan. The weak yen has turned Japan from an expensive luxury destination into an affordable option. A country that used to cost twice what Thailand cost now costs about the same or even less in some categories. I priced out a week in Tokyo versus a week in Bangkok. Similar quality hotels, basically the same price. Food. Tokyo was actually cheaper for certain meals. Transport. Tokyo's public transport is so good and affordable it beats Bangkok easily. Activities comparable. But Tokyo has something Bangkok doesn't. Everything works. Trains run exactly on time. Streets are clean. You feel safe walking anywhere at any hour. The Wi-Fi is fast. The toilets are heated. It's just better. And tourists are noticing. Japan saw 25 million tourists in 2024 and is projected to hit 30 million or more in 2025. That's not just recovery, that's growth. Those are tourists who used to go to Southeast Asia and are now going to Japan instead. South Korea is pulling the same play. Seoul used to be expensive. Now, with the one where it is, South Korea is competitive with Thailand on price and beats it on everything else. Better food, better infrastructure, cleaner, safer. But the real threat is Europe. Portugal has become the new Thailand for digital nomads and retirees. Lisbon and Porto are full of remote workers who used to live in Chiang Mai or Bali. Why? Similar costs, but you get European healthcare, European infrastructure, European safety standards. Plus you're in the EU, so you can travel easily to 25 plus countries. Spain is seeing the same boom. Barcelona, Valencia, Seville, packed with digital nomads and tourists who've realized they don't need to go to Asia to find good weather, cheap wine and a low cost of living. The comparison is devastating. In Valencia, you can rent a nice apartment for 800 to 1,200 euros. That's 40,000 to 60,000 pesos or 30,000 to 40,000 baht. In Bangkok or Manila, you're paying similar or more for worse quality. Food in Spain can be cheaper than Thailand now if you know where to eat. A menu del dia, a full meal with wine, might cost 12 to 15 euros. That's 600 to 750 baht. In tourist areas of Bangkok, you're paying that or more for worse food. Latin America is the other surprise winner. Colombia, Mexico, Argentina. They've become digital nomad hubs that used to be dominated by Southeast Asia. Medellin is full of remote workers who used to live in Chiang Mai. Why'd they switch? Better internet, similar costs, great weather, better healthcare. And honestly, they felt the social scene was more genuine, less of the transactional feeling that Thailand developed. Mexico City, Playa del Carmen, Tulum. These places are eating Bali's lunch. The exact same demographic that used to do 6-month stints in Bali is now doing them in Mexico. Same price point, better food, debatable, but many think so. Easier access for Americans. Buenos Aires became a budget paradise when the peso collapsed. Suddenly you could live like a king for $800 a month. The digital nomad community flocked there. Those are people who absolutely would have been in Southeast Asia pre-2020. Even places that weren't on the radar are competing now. Albania, Georgia, Turkey. These emerging destinations are offering what Southeast Asia used to offer. Affordable living, interesting culture, friendly people, and a sense of discovery. The digital nomad visa race has also hurt Southeast Asia. Portugal, Spain, Croatia, Mexico, Colombia. They've all introduced proper digital nomad visas with reasonable requirements. You can legally live and work remotely for 1 to 2 years without jumping through hoops. Southeast Asia. Thailand's visa situation is a confusing mess. The Philippines has okay visa options, but the infrastructure drives people away. Vietnam requires visa runs or complicated residency processes. They made it hard while Europe and Latin America made it easy. The data backs this up. Digital nomad communities that used to be 70% Southeast Asia based are now maybe 40% Southeast Asia, 30% Latin America, 30% Europe. That's a massive shift in just 3 to 4 years. Travel influencers have shifted too. 5 years ago, every travel YouTuber was doing Southeast Asia content. Now, they're in Lisbon, Mexico City, Medellin, Tokyo. The algorithm follows the audience and the audience has moved. I follow about 30 travel content creators. In 2019, maybe 20 of them were regularly posting from Southeast Asia. In 2024, 5, maybe 6. The rest have pivoted to other regions because that's where their audience wants to see content from. This creates a vicious cycle. Less content means less inspiration, means fewer tourists, means less content. Meanwhile, Portugal and Mexico content is exploding because creators follow the demand. The cruise industry tells the same story. Cruise lines are reducing Southeast Asia stops and adding more Japan, South Korea, and Mediterranean routes. Why? Because that's what customers want. They're voting with their wallets. Airlines are responding too. More direct routes to Lisbon, Mexico City, Bogota. Fewer new routes to Bangkok, Manila, or Hanoi. The market is speaking. Even within Asia, the competition is brutal. Bali is still doing okay, but more Indonesian tourism is shifting to other islands. Singapore is expensive but worth it for many tourists because everything works perfectly. Taiwan is emerging as a food destination. Malaysia is stable but not growing fast enough. The point is, Southeast Asia isn't competing in a vacuum. It's competing in a global tourism market where dozens of destinations are getting better, cheaper, and easier, while Southeast Asia got worse, more expensive, and harder. That's not a sustainable position, and here's the kicker. Southeast Asia seems oblivious to this. Government officials still talk like it's 2010, and tourists have no other options. They implement policies that make things harder. Stricter visas, more taxes, less support for tourism infrastructure. While their competitors are doing the opposite, Portugal is rolling out red carpets for digital nomads. Spain is simplifying visa processes. Mexico is building infrastructure specifically for remote workers. Japan is creating programs to distribute tourists beyond Tokyo. Southeast Asia, raising prices, scamming tourists, letting infrastructure rot, and wondering why people aren't coming back. Let's talk about how Southeast Asian governments are actively sabotaging their own tourism industries with idiotic visa and tax policies. Thailand is the poster child for policy chaos. Every few months there's a new visa rule, or a new tax threat, or a new restriction. Nobody knows what the hell is legal anymore. The tax situation is a perfect example. In 2024, Thailand announced that foreigners spending more than 180 days in the country might be taxed on worldwide income they bring into Thailand. Maybe, possibly, depending on interpretation, nobody's really sure. The law is so vague that even tax lawyers can't agree on what it means. Does it apply to retirement savings, to pensions, to freelance income earned before you arrived? Nobody knows. But the uncertainty alone drove people away. I know multiple retirees who left Thailand purely because of tax uncertainty. They didn't even know if they'd owe anything. They just couldn't handle the stress of not knowing. The visa options are a maze. Tourist visa, special tourist visa, retirement visa, education visa, elite visa, business visa, marriage visa, dependent visa. There are like 15 different categories. Each has different requirements. Each requires different documents. Half of them require you to leave the country and apply from outside. Compare this to Portugal's digital nomad visa, one simple application, clear requirements, handled entirely online. Or Mexico, where many nationalities can just stay for 180 days with no visa at all. Thailand used to be easy. Show up, get stamped in, stay for a month. Want to stay longer? Do a border run. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Now they've cracked down on border runs. They're scrutinizing every entry. They're denying people arbitrarily. I watched a British guy get denied entry at Bangkok airport because he'd been in Thailand too long over the previous year, even though he'd never overstayed and had always followed the rules. He had a return flight, hotel bookings, proof of funds. Didn't matter. Immigration officer just said no and he had to fly somewhere else. That creates fear. Word spreads. People who were planning long-term stays in Thailand start thinking, what if I get arbitrarily denied? What if I plan my whole life around being there and they just don't let me in one day? The Philippines has its own version of this. The SRRV, Special Resident Retirees Visa, used to be one of the best retirement visas in Asia. Simple requirements, permanent residency, easy process. Then they started changing the rules, raising the deposit requirements, adding new document requirements, making renewals more complicated. Each change wasn't huge, but cumulatively, they made the program less attractive. And the corruption in the visa process is exhausting. You can apply for a visa the proper way and wait 6 months, or you can pay an agent who knows someone and get it in 3 weeks. That's not how a professional country operates. Vietnam requires visa runs for most long-term stays. You can't just stay indefinitely. You have to leave every 90 days or whatever your visa allows. That's fine if you're traveling around the region, but if you want to settle down and live somewhere, it's annoying. Compared to Spain, where you can get a proper 1-year renewable digital nomad visa, or Portugal's D7 visa for retirees, or Mexico's temporary resident visa that can lead to permanent residency. These are real stable, long-term options. Southeast Asia gives you short-term patches and makes you constantly stress about whether you'll be able to stay. The cannabis situation in Thailand is a perfect microcosm of the policy chaos. In 2022, they decriminalized it. Cannabis shops exploded everywhere. Tourists came specifically for legal weed. It became a whole thing. Then in late 2024, the government started talking about recriminalizing it. Maybe just for recreational use, maybe entirely, maybe only for certain products. Nobody knows. Entrepreneurs who'd invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into legal businesses were suddenly facing the possibility that their entire business would become illegal. Tourists who were planning trips around cannabis, tourism started cancelling. The policy hasn't even changed yet, but the uncertainty alone killed the momentum. That's the problem. When governments can't provide stable, predictable rules, people go somewhere that can. The visitor tax proposals are another joke. Thailand keeps floating ideas about charging tourists an entry fee. 300 baht per person, or maybe more, to pay for tourism infrastructure, supposedly. Okay, but here's the thing. Tourists are already paying for their visas. They're paying taxes on everything they buy. They're paying airport taxes. They're paying hotel taxes. And the infrastructure is still shit. So where's that money going? Adding another fee feels like a slap in the face, especially when you've just paid $600 for a flight and you land at an airport that looks like it hasn't been updated since 1987. The Philippines has similar nonsense. Random terminal fees, ferry surcharges, tourist fees at national parks that weren't there last year. Every time you turn around, there's a new handout expecting payment. It's death by 1,000 cuts again. No single fee is outrageous, but the cumulative effect is you feel like an ATM machine being constantly dinged. The environmental excuses are transparent too. We're closing this beach to protect the environment. Cool. So you close Maya Bay for recovery, then you reopen it with strict limits on visitors. That's good. But then you charge tourists triple to visit, and the money doesn't seem to go toward environmental protection. It just disappears. If you're going to charge me extra for environmental protection, show me the protection. Show me the clean water projects, the reef restoration, the waste management. Don't just pocket the money and call it an environmental fee. The work permit situation is also absurd. Digital nomads technically need work permits to work remotely from Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam. But the process to get a work permit is so complicated and expensive that nobody does it. So everyone works illegally, looking over their shoulder, hoping they don't get caught. Meanwhile, Portugal says, come work here, here's a visa that explicitly allows remote work. Spain says the same. Mexico says the same. They want digital nomads. Southeast Asia wants the money digital nomads spend, but makes it legally murky whether they're even allowed to be there. The mixed messages are maddening too. Government officials give speeches about wanting quality tourists, while simultaneously implementing policies that drive away exactly those tourists. You want quality tourists? Quality tourists want stable visa policies. They want clear tax rules. They want infrastructure that works. They want to feel welcome, not like they're being exploited. Instead, Southeast Asian governments are implementing policies that seem designed to extract maximum short-term cash while driving away long-term visitors. That's not a strategy, that's just greed. And tourists notice, they talk about it in forums, they warn each other, they consider different destinations. Real investment in airports and transportation. Not announcements, not plans. Actual construction and modernization. Serious crackdowns on scams with real consequences. Not periodic operations. Permanent systems that protect tourists and punish bad actors. Clear, stable policies on visas and taxes. Give people certainty. Let them plan their lives without constant fear of rule changes. Competitive pricing that reflects actual value. Stop charging premium prices for economy experiences. And most importantly, treating tourists like valued guests instead of revenue sources to be maximized in the short term. The governments that figure this out will win. The ones that don't will watch their tourism industries slowly fade. I'm not rooting against Southeast Asia. I'm rooting for it. I want to see these countries succeed. I want to see the beaches full again. I want to see small businesses thriving. I want to see tourists leaving with amazing memories instead of warnings for their friends. But wanting something isn't enough. Hoping things get better isn't a strategy. Real change requires acknowledging real problems. So, to Southeast Asian tourism officials watching this, the data is clear, the trend is real. Tourists are choosing other destinations. That's not opinion, it's measurable fact. You can dismiss criticism as negativity, or you can use it as a wake-up call. You can blame external factors, or you can fix internal systems. You can defend the status quo, or you can build something better. The choice is yours. But the clock is ticking. Every year of denial is another year of lost opportunity. Another year of tourists booking Portugal instead of Phuket. Another year of digital nomads choosing Medellin over Manila. The potential is still there. The question is whether you'll do what's necessary to unlock it. And to everyone watching, tourists, expats, digital nomads, locals, I want to hear your perspective. Am I missing something important? Are things better or worse than I described? What solutions would you propose? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a conversation worth having, and I want to hear all sides of it. If you found this analysis valuable, even if you disagreed with parts of it, hit that like button. It helps more people see this content and join the conversation, and subscribe to Journals Beyond Horizons. I'm committed to honest analysis of expat and travel life, not tourism board marketing, not blind negativity, just honest assessment of what's actually happening on the ground. Whether that makes me popular or not, the truth matters. And right now, Southeast Asia needs more truth and less propaganda. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.